So I'm waiting for the 800, so I don't know if they would come. Am I supposed to start? Okay, I've been asked to come here and talk about the world, and just realize I need one more thing here. Need one more thing. And the background is that I am the smartest professor in the world. I'm not the most intelligent, very far from most intelligent. And I'm not the most knowledgeable, very far from the most knowledgeable. But I'm lazy, so I have to be smart. And therefore I found an area to teach in where it seems as people know very little. That makes my life easy, isn't it? Other professors, they teach in very difficult areas where also the knowledge is very big. So they have a very, very big task. But I've chosen to teach about the world. And before we start, my idea was that I should put some questions to you. I will talk about, when I talk about the world, I picked what I think three most important things. People, to me people are very important. Money is very important. And then energy as a symbol for natural resources, or everything the way people use when they spend their money. So first, people. And this is the first question. Unfortunately, we didn't have voting device for all of you, but all of you can think about this. How are the 7 billion people in the world living? Where do they live? You can see 7 billion there. This is Africa, Asia, America, and Europe. And there, and there, and there. How are they distributed? Those of you who have the voting device, you can start voting directly when you have decided. Do you know where the 7 billion people live? Which do you think? Good, we have people coming in voting here. We found that this often is not taught. People often know countries, how many there are in countries, but how they sum up on continents is more difficult. 47 years. Now there's someone here now sitting and adding country population, you know. That will take too much time. Go for your gut feelings now, and see how many do we have. I think I give you 3 more seconds, and then we go on for the next one here, the next question. Because this, I think, is a very, very, very basic one. Now, I closed it there, and then we go to the next. Now, this is about the number of children in the world. Children are very important. When I was born, there was less than 1 billion children in the world. And then it increased during my lifetime to reach about at the turn of the century here, almost 2 billion. Now, what do the United Nations demographers, population experts say? Do they say that it will continue to increase and be about 4 in the end of this century? This is 2100. I can put that one together there. Or do they say, no, it will slow down and it will be just 3 billion children? Or do they say, no, the number of children have stopped increasing. There will be no more than 2 billion by the end of this century. What do you think? Please vote. This is quite a tricky one. Thank you. Now you catched up speed. So this is the next one. And this is an important one. There will be more people in the world. There will be 3 to 4 billion more during this century. Just 1 week ago, we got the new update from United Nations. Why will the people grow? Why will we have 3 to 4 billion more? All these 4 alternatives contribute. So there's no like stupid alternative. Each of these 4 alternatives contribute to more people, but one is the big one, the most important. Is it that there will be more children because more and more babies will be born? Is it that there will be more children because more and more of the poor children will survive? Or is it that there will be more adults because large young populations in the world will get older? Or is it that there will be more adults because people will live longer at old age? Which is the most important of these 4 for the increase of the population? I very much welcome those who can help me to phrase those alternatives better. We have struggled a lot to put them in short text. Okay, there we have enough there, 60, so we go on for the next one here. How many babies do women on average in the world give birth to today? In the world, the whole world population. On average. Please vote. Yeah. That's not so much to think about. Either you know or you don't know. Yep. Now, if we take just the worst of countries, which still have deep poverty, civil war, worst off, how many babies do women there get on average? Take Afghanistan or Congo. Please vote. In other words, I'll tell you this is relatively well known. Thank you, you are quick at voting. Bangladesh. Bangladesh is one of the 10 biggest countries in the world when it comes to population. It's a Muslim country, it's relatively poor in Asia. How many children per woman are born in Bangladesh? How long do people live in the world? Do they live 50, 60 or 70 years? Life expectancy means if everything remains the same, what is the average length of life of a child born today in the world? This is what life expectancy is. If everything remains the same all over the world, how long would they live? Good. What percent of the adults are literate, that they can read and write? As you see, I like to put world questions, the entire world population. You often don't see this calculated as world numbers. There we are. Now, men in the world between 25 to 34, that age group that has passed the period of life when you go to school or universities, they have been to school on average 8 years. 8 years. How long have women in the same age group been to school? Women who are 25 to 34. Of course, the data is a little uncertain, but there's also a huge difference between my alternatives. How long have women been to school? Thank you. Now you're getting quicker and quicker. There we are. Now we go back. There we are. Now, we have put these questions to 1,000 randomly sampled people in Sweden and in the United Kingdom. And this has never been published. And it's sort of preliminary compiled data. So it's absolutely, it's before news this. This is before news. In Sweden, this was the answer. Most of the Swedes thought it was like this or like this. In United Kingdom, quite similar. And you voted like this. 52% there. And then this, and what is the truth? Is there. Quite good, congratulations. And now let's move on to the next. Here we are. In this one, Sweden voted like this. They thought it will continue to grow to 3 billion. United Kingdom, they thought it would grow even more. And you thought it would grow to 3 billion. 90% thought that it will stop, and that's what it will. I call this peak child. The fact that the number of children in the world have stopped growing is the biggest event in the history of mankind that has ever been missed completely by the media. It's absolutely surprising, isn't it? It's so important because very few believe that there are immigration from outer space. There are many people who are worried about immigrants, and there is a few who are worried that there come people from outer space also. But we know that increase of population means that there should be increase of children. And children have stopped growing. And there's also no one is born at an older age, so you can't add more people. And this is me, not even you, but this is the highest number I have ever got. So congratulations again. It's the highest number I've ever got. And help me launch peak child. Peak oil is much more doubtful. This is quite certain. We are estimated now 1.92 billion. It will go to 2.0 and then go down again to 1.9. It's over. The growth of children is over and it is missed. And I've become more interesting why there's such a lot of lack of knowledge about the world than about the world. I used to be very interested about the world. Now I become interested about why do we know or don't know certain things about the world. Now here, this is interesting. This was the answer here in Sweden, this in UK. And this was you. And you fought 40 years. You thought you will live long. And the right answer is this one. The reason why we will get 2 to 3 billion more is that we have already all those 2 billion children. If you have 2 billion children below 15 years of age, and they will live until they are about 70, 75, then you will get 10 billion, isn't it? 15, 30, 45, 60, 75. 2 times 5 is 10. We are 7 now, we will be 10. It's just the fill up of young people, and you know what they do when they grow up? They change the world, like in Brazil and in Turkey at present. Those are the sort of game-changing things. This is a mechanism. I will show you this later. This is also very little known. Number of babies per woman. This was Sweden, this was UK, and this was you. You were even thinking there were more there. And this is the right. So you have about, this was about 20 years ago, this was about 40 years ago. And this will take another about 80 to 100 years to reach that. Demography change very slowly. That's why it's a good time to learn about it. It changed very slowly. How many babies in Congo? We only asked that in UK. This is what they thought. This is what you thought. And here it seems that you're quite right. You overestimated the number of children per woman in the world, and you underestimated it in the worst country. This is very typical. The mind is set for a developing world. A big chunk of the world where everything is more or less the same. There is no awareness that there is a smaller part of the world where things are very rough. You still have 6 children per woman, but most of the world is quite modern. So it's this pattern which you can see here. Now, here we go to the next. Bangladesh, Sweden think this, and this is to me very exciting now. Let's see, this is the right one. You disappointed me. It's the miracle in Bangladesh. Haven't you heard about it? They broke the rules of science. The women, the young women and young men in Bangladesh hadn't studied science. They just decided to have fewer children. They didn't know it was impossible. They did it. The imams helped the family planning program. It was a very, very forward country. This is one of the most dramatic surprises, and it's not known. It's not known. This is, on average, you are very, very similar. Isn't it interesting how similar you are to the general population in Britain and in Sweden? Huh? Of course, it makes my life very easy because I've chosen to teach about this. So ignorance is my best friend. Life expectancy in the world, well, this was Sweden, this was UK, this was you, and this is the truth. It's the modern world. Death rates are down. Death rates are down in most of the world, but not among the poorest 1 to 2 billion, but it's just 1.5 billion of 7 billion who live in deep poverty with high disease burden. Huh? How many can read? Welcome to the modern world. Men and women, this is interesting. You see, this is a distinct difference between United Kingdom and Sweden. Sweden is more insulated in the world. You know, United Kingdom have more contact, perhaps. Now, let's see your group here. The difference between schooling in men and women is just 1 year in the world. And you have heard about how bad it is for girls who cannot go to school, and that's true. But it's true in the poorest 1 billion. Or 1.5 billion. In Bangladesh today, women go longer to school than men. Did you hear? In Muslim, poor Bangladesh, women go more to school than men. Many countries are like that. Women are sort of tougher, more dedicated. They study harder once they get the chance across the world. And we have... And this gives an impression that the world is like it was like 20, 30, 40 years ago. But still it's great injustice. And one thing I used to say, going to school is so far from gender equity as anything can be. We have used like going to school is like being equal for girls and women. It's not. It's not. You can go to school, that's just the first little tiny step, an absolutely minimal thing. Gender equity is so much more. So it's like, there's no knowledge on this. So how is it? How are we thinking? This is the world. And you now saw that the 7 billion we have, they live 1 in America, 1 in Europe, 1 in Africa, and 4 in Asia. The pin code of the world, 1114. Remember that, 1114. But pin code change, doesn't it? You know how problematic it is when the pin code change. So by 2050, there will be 1 billion more in Asia and 1 billion more in Africa. This is the main message now. Europe is a boring place. It has stopped growing. Here we will have some more retired people in South America, but that's it. It has almost stopped. Asia will stop. When I say stop, it means the fast population growth will be over. It still can increase slowly, or it can start decreasing. That we don't know. But this fast growth, that will be over in Asia by 2050. In Africa, it's just as fast as it will ever be now. Africa will double in 40 years. And by the end of this century, Africa is projected at present to get 2 billion more. There will be 4 billion more in Africa. So start being polite to Africans as of today. They will be your customers and they will be your tourists. And they will be too many to have as enemies. Can you see that in the future, in the future, more than 80% of the world population will live in Africa and Asia. This will be the sea of trade. And you can also see the best investment if you have some extra money you want to save for your grandkids. You buy a bit of the beach in Somalia, the new Florida. And we don't have this. It's a lack of sort of imagination. I remember when I went to school and our teacher said, we are 3 billion people in the world. But it will grow. And they say by the end of this century it will be so many. Look here. 1958 it was. The United Nations made its first projection of world population. And they said it would grow like this. And what happened? We know now. They said it would be more than 6 billion. My teacher, who was a very good teacher, a very kind woman, a very ethically high standard. And she said, we know there can't be more than 1 billion people in India and 1 billion more in China because they are Buddhists and Hinduists and they are fatalists and they can't, this will not happen. Everyone knows that. They just say this. This is stupid calculation by demographers, more or less. And this is what you could read in the papers. And this is the result. Respect for demography. I'm not a demographer. I'm not talking about myself. I'm a medical epidemiologist. It's quite far away. These are the mathematicians of social science. They were 4% wrong in 42 years projection. This is their mid projection. They do an upper and they do a lower. They are amazingly correct on the world. Certain countries, they did quite big mistakes. Someone had less population, others had more. But on average in the world, they are quite good. And yet, these numbers in the world are not taught in school. They're just discussed. It is as the world is just there for emotions and ideology. It's not taught. Now we talk about sustainability or we talk about rights, but children in school are not taught about the world, the fact. They know that Sahara is a desert and Himalaya mountains. But the things that change gradually that are so important, there we have tremendous lack of knowledge. And why can we know this? We can know this because it's fairly easy. The two parents, on average, got 6 children throughout history, thousands of years back. In all sorts of records we can look. Human population, humans as humans, on average get 6 children. Some get many more, others get fewer, some don't get anyone. On average in population is like that. Why didn't world population grow then in the past? Why didn't it grow very, very fast? It is because, tragically, up to 200 years ago, it was like this. 3, 4 children died before growing up to become parents themselves, on average. Some lost all their children. Some had all the children growing up, and they had to marry away the girls as soon as possible. Child marriages of girls is a surplus of surviving girls that force poor families and poor communities to culturalize the right to marry away young girls that survive. When you get away 6 children families, 4 children families, you get into the modern world, child marriages will disappear. It's a need for a fight against it also because it's culture that will hang on, but it will disappear. So what happened with the Industrial Revolution? Was it that we got more children? No, still 6, but less died. And when 4 survived, then population grew like this and we became 7 billion. And many people think it will continue like this. They think it will be like this in the future. And many call this exponential growth, or even worse, population explosion. I hate the term population explosion. It means that loved children are equalized to bombs of terrorists. Never, ever use that term. It's the start of ethnic cleansing to talk about population explosion. It's ugly, very, very ugly term. And there is no exponential growth. For 50 years we have had an absolutely linear growth. Can you see? Where is that exponential? What does it mean when your bank account increases with the same number of euros every year? It means that the interest rate is falling, 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 falling. When I show this to the hedge fund manager, they are scared. They say, oh, that will stop. My fund can never grow like that. This is the end of it. Because they see immediately, greedy people are more clever in mathematics, you know. They see that this is what is about to happen. We have almost reached the new balance. We have 2.5 children per woman today. And that's almost enough for turning off this. We've had the enormous fall. So let me show you what this means when we go to country level. To country level. And here we are now. And I will expand this one and go there and expand this one. Every bubble is a country, size is population, India and China, color is where they are situated, East Asia, South Asia, Africa, Middle East, Europe and Americas. And on the axis is here, I put number of children per woman. This is when I went to school, 62. The total area of these bubbles is 3 billion people. 2 children per woman, 4, 6, 8. You can see the countries with few children, countries with many children. This is child survival. How many children survived to the age of 5 per 1,000 born? This means that 10% died, 100 per 1,000, 20%, 30%. There were countries where every third child died before reaching the age of 5. And you can clearly see that the world consisted of 2 types of countries, developing and developed, as they were called, or the West and the rest, or whatever. There were 2 types. The dichotomy was correct. There was nothing wrong. This was the end of colonial imperialistic time. Some countries made it, others were dominated. And this is what we have. But what has happened? Has child mortality gone down? Has number of children per woman gone down? Look here, when I run the world, here we go. Can you see China coming down there? And now family planning starts in China. They move very fast to smaller family. These are Latin America. They don't care about the Pope. They go down here. And look here at Iran, Islamic Republic of Iran. And here Bangladesh is coming. And even African countries like Ethiopia move very fast. That's the world today. Can you see the difference between developing countries and developed? So why do you use that term then? What do you mean with it? Yesterday, almost with someone from Europe or from North America or taken hostage or murdered somewhere in the world, it's Westerners were taken hostage. Westerners were murdered by terrorists. In Pakistan this week, it was foreigners who were killed. Those climbers from China and Ukraine who were killed by a terrorist attack. Then they are foreigners and tourists. People from West Europe and North America are never foreigners or tourists, they are Westerners. There's a very strange cultural identity which keeps up. And we can't see the difference. And many think that, oh, this is due to the one-child policy in China. Look here. But China has 1.6. This is the result of one-child policy. There's one big part of China that never had the one-child policy, Taiwan. It would be interesting to see what is the number of children per woman in Taiwan. It's 1. So without one-child policy, you get 1 child. With one-child policy, you get 1.6. And you didn't know it. My conclusion, in the bedroom, there are forces much greater and bigger and stronger than the Communist Party. Because young couples, or especially young women, decide for themselves in the world today. And you can see that almost all countries are here. And the average, 2.5. Of course, you are right, Afghanistan and Congo are here, 5, 6. Whereas here we have almost all the world, and the big countries are on this side. India is here. It has actually moved. This is 2009. India is moving down here now. In India, 500 million people in India live in states. India is divided in states. They live in states which have the same number of children per woman as Finland or less. 500 million. So it's the fertility transformation has really taken place already. And look here, you have Ghana, you have Ethiopia. Just look at Ethiopia, what Ethiopia has done the last 20 years. It's quite amazing. Can you see, they went from here to here. And I'm not talking politics, I'm just observing data which are collected in collaboration with international authorities and researchers. And this is the fact what we have. Ghana and Ethiopia are here. So this is what Francois Pelletier, he is the head of counting the people in the world. And this is when he gets the honorable medal at the University of Montreal. Montreal is the center of demography in the world because the French immigrants, they wanted to defend their language and they kept records of all births and deaths from the day they arrived to America. So it's a fantastic historical ground for doing great demography research, and they've done it. And the person who is now in charge of counting us is Francois Pelletier. He's chief of population estimate and project. And what does he say about the world? He says, fertility runs the show. World population is only about number of children per woman. And yet the most common email we get from secondary school children, And the most common protest or objection that Bill and Melinda Gates get is this: if you save the poor children, you destroy the planet. There was even a process in Finland where environmentally concerned students were protesting against UNICEF. And this is not an ethical problem, it's just lack of knowledge. Mortality is so low, the only thing that determines how many people we are how many are born. Because out of 135 million born, only 7 million children die. Sorry, one shouldn't say only for such a tragic thing. There are 7 million dying, but 135 million born, and there are 30 million abortions in the world every year. The abortion outnumbers the child death many times over. So slight differences in abortion rates is what help to change, or which impact the fertility rate. It's all about how many children are born. And this is very interesting when Francois says this, because for the last 15 years, he has been head of the mortality section. He has been counting the dead. He was counting death for 15 years, and he did it so well, so then he was upgraded to counting the living. And he says, it's no longer about mortality. He knows what he's talking about. And look at Ghana. Ghana is down here, as I showed you. If I split it into its richest 20% and poorest 20%, you can see that one part of Ghana, these African countries, is together with Asia here. And the other one, the worst off, is together with Afghanistan. That's one successful African country. In the one hand, and it's like Thailand or the successful part of China. In the other end, it's like Afghanistan. This is how you have to think about Africa today. Africa is like Asia. Some parts are as successful as Asia, others are as tragic civil wars as we have seen in Cambodia and Afghanistan. Don't think about Africa is like this. That's over, that's period. And here you have good economic growth, here you invest, here they still need aid. And this debate about aid, whether it's good or bad, is so stupid. It's like saying, is tax good or bad? Is media good or bad? No, they're very good media, they're very bad media. But only with aid we keep this discussing whether the whole thing is good or bad. This is Ethiopia. I split Ethiopia into its provinces. And you see Addis Ababa there and war-torn Somali region there. This is the world. 75% of world population live in countries or regions where there are 2 children per woman. And they can be Catholics here in Mexico, Buddhists in Vietnam, Muslims in Bangladesh, Hindus in India, or Coptic Christians in Addis Ababa. This is the most common family in the world today. We are already there. But there is this poorest part of the world where we still have high. Afghanistan, the poorest part of Africa, northern Ghana. And here, look here, this is the number of children per woman in the world up to my time at the university. It didn't change much, from 6 to 5. But then during my lifetime, it fell like never before. This is the average of the world. It came down all the way there today, and this is what will happen. Everyone agrees on this. This is not like speculation or anything. We will see this happen. And this is because Europe came down first, then America, then Asia came down, and here is Africa. And Africa is going like this. But the very difference, whether we will be 10 billion in the world, or 9 billion and a half, or 10 billion and a half, or 11 billion, depends on whether Africa falls like this, or Africa falls like this. And it depends on whether Europe stays down here with Asia, or whether they go back up to 2 there. This is what it is. Small, small details. And people who, we should say this. So why will we then increase? If we are so low, why will we increase? Well, there will be more adults because a large young population will get older. This is what very few of you picked as the main reason. We will get more people because more babies will be born. In some parts of the world, we will be more because in some areas, little more of the poorer children will survive. We will get more, 500 million more, because the old will live even longer. So all those 4 all time, but this is the big one, and I'll show you why. Look, here we have 100 millions. Each doll here is 100 million. This is Europe, below 15 to 30, 30, 45, 45 to 60. This is me. Can you see me up there? European, above 60. That's me. This is boring Europe, more or less the same. It's actually one of this is disappearing down here now. This is America. There will be one more retired, 100 millions there in South America. Look at dramatic Africa. Africa population look like this today. This is only partly because people have died. There were very few born in Africa 50 years ago because they have had very many children per woman every year. So they have increased the basis. So even if Africa, as of tonight, will get 2 children per woman, you saw how it was. Even if that happened, how many will there be in Africa? Twice as many. Can you see? There's no way that there will be no, there is one way, kill and bomb. So when the environmentalists get carried away and they say, oh, we can't be more than 7 billion in the world, they propose a new Holocaust. And that's a bad thing to do. It's even nasty to talk about these manipulations of population. It doesn't work. It won't work. You know, you saw the one-child policy in China, and you see President Erdogan started to tell women in Turkey that they should have 3 children when they have 1.4 in Istanbul, and you see what happens. You don't go and tell people what to do in the bedroom. They don't like leaders to do that. Neither political leaders nor religious leaders. They want to choose themselves. Asia has stopped increasing but still need to fill up. Look, this whole area, instead of making a population pyramid, I've made a big gap in the middle. Now what will happen? What will happen? Do you know what happens to people like me? Any medical journalist here? Anyone who is aware what happens to old men? They die. They die. It's sure. Look, there, they're gone. The rest grow older and they have babies. They all die, grow older, have babies. Die, grow older, have babies. Die, grow older, have babies. And you see the number of children will not increase because it's decreasing in Asia and increasing in Africa. That's why this will stay 2 billion. Here nothing happened, here nothing happened. Once again, the future of the world is Africa and Asia. That's the absolute dominant part of the world. And some will get older. I hope to be this. I've told my children, don't switch off the respirator as long as I can read the statistics. As long as I can read the statistics with one eye. I want to see next year's data coming out, you know. Nothing more. We all have our different interests. This is a big fill-up of adults. That's the inevitable big fill-up of adults, 2.5 billion. Try to explain that to your readers and your viewers. Because this is not known, this is not understood. And this is up for discussion. This we don't know. Africa may fall very fast, there will be fewer, but women in Asia may gain gender equity. Why are there so few children in Asia? I discovered that when I was at the big banking conference. I lecture in the financial sector and in the corporate sector. There was a big bank meeting in Hong Kong and a fantastic dinner. And I sat next to the most successful young banker in Hong Kong. She was 37 years old. And I asked her, you just work all the time, you know, in the end of the dinner. Don't you think about family? And she said, yes. And she looked up like this. I think about children all the day. It's the idea of a husband I can't stand. You see, gender equity doesn't come automatically with school. Remember what I said before? Yes, women go to school doesn't mean that they are in an equal position. Many young women in the successful parts of Asia, if they marry, they are not expected to divorce forever. They should take care of their parents-in-law, and they have very much limitations in their life. So they choose not to marry, they marry late, or they have few children. That we don't know. So it's all about fertility. Fertility runs the show. Fertility runs the show. We jumped this one. And when you get really few children, what happens? What happens? The population will age, isn't it? But aging of population is not so much that they live longer, it's that they get fewer and fewer children. And Japan passed the line that no country has passed before. They sell today more geriatric diapers than baby diapers. That has never happened before. So this has importance, this has practical importance, you know. And these people know in the marketplace, you know, how to handle these things. So what about money? What about money? I never thought I would live to see this map. This is International Monetary Fund, IMF's webpage, and shows the countries of the world. Dark brown is fast economic growth. This is money now, not people. And look at Chad, no growth. Eritrea, no growth. West Europe, no growth. North America, very little growth. I never thought that the worst of countries in the world and the richest in the world would have very little growth, and all the rest are growing, 5% or more. The world is slowly coming together. And there's nothing strange in that. There's nothing strange in that. People across the world go to school, they are healthy, they send their kids to study hard, they say. They stimulate the kids. They graduate as the best engineers in the world in Asia today. And you see a catch-up, and that is ongoing. It's just that there's a mentality here and here that it won't happen. There's a toxic combination of ignorance and arrogance in West Europe and North America, where we fail to teach the students and the viewers and the readers of media that there is 2 children per woman in Bangladesh, not 4 or 5. This is very strange, because this bedroom stuff is very important. That's how we judge other people, whether they plan for the future or not. And 2-child families is really planning for the future, is wanting to give the best to your children. So if I would look at the economy like this, so let me show this first, how this growth looks like. This is name dropping. You should have name dropping in all lectures. This is me with Ji Gang last summer. I was invited to a meeting in Oxford with big investors and we should discuss energy and climate. And they asked me to come. No, it's in the summer, I have holiday, I said. Yes, but those in the room, they have $6 trillion they control. I'll come, I said. But Ji Gang only, he had 3 trillion. So this man had half the money and there were 200 in the room. So what is he? He's the state administrator of foreign exchange. He's head of the foreign exchange in China. You know, China sells more than they buy, so their money piles up, and then they start lending it across the world or investing it. And I asked him after my presentation, Mr. Gang, I said, is my worldview correct? And he answered, I don't know, but it's identical to mine. I think there's a typical humble Chinese way of putting it. We have difficulties knowing the world. Be critical to what I'm saying. Be critical to it, because it's one way of giving an overview. But many people have the same. And it's strangely, if you look at the data, you get a worldview that corresponds to the emerging economy, to the new elite across the world. You don't get a worldview that corresponds to those in West Europe and North America. And this is his growth. This is foreign exchange in China. It was there, and then it was growing. See, it was growing like nothing happens. Nothing happens. And then it started to grow a little, and then it grew very, very fast. And here they bought the Volvo company, and the Swedes understood. It was a very problem-based learning is very good, you know. And when China acquired the Volvo company, then really people understood in Sweden that something has happened. And is this a true picture? Let me do something courageous. This is in PowerPoint, but live on stage, I'm going to end the PowerPoint. I'm going to open the axis here, and I'm going to click in the box for logarithmic scale. And then I close it, and then I expand it. See, same data, just another scale. A scale where you can see the doubling from 1 billion to 10 to 2 billion to 4 billion to 8 billion, passing 10, 100,000, 10,000. It took 1 year after Deng Xiaoping opened the market economy, and money started to accumulate in China. And you ask the Chinese leaders why China is successful, and they say the wise decision of the leaders and the hard work of the people. And this is really what it is. People have been working very hard for this. But they started to grow their money, but we didn't see it until it came here. Isn't it strange? When someone is very poor, they can grow fast, but you don't see it. Because you have to grow from a very small level, and you grow and you grow and you grow and grow, and then suddenly something happens. And it's like we don't understand it. If I would be very small, and I would be growing from down here, look here. Now you don't see me. I'm growing. You don't know, am I growing? I'm growing. Now you see me, eh? And now I buy Volvo. Then you understand. This is the problem of logarithmic growth. You hear Africa is growing and they say, I don't believe those numbers. I went to Africa, they are very poor. Yeah, they're very poor, but they were much poorer 10 years ago, 20 years ago. You underestimate the force of growth from low level when you are up there. Huh? And this is a very, very important aspect, you know. So let's vote again. In the last 30 years, the proportion of the world population living in extreme poverty has increased, remained more or less the same, or decreased. Now I'm not talking about the developing world. Now I'm talking about the very poorest. Is it like the very poorest in the world? Is that percentage increasing? Is it the same, or is it decreasing? Keep voting, keep voting. Huh? And we will compare your results again with, here we are. Okay, so I close the voting there. I have to do this, I have to go back there, and this is what they thought in Sweden, this is what you thought in UK, and this is what you thought. Aha! Did you know this question, or did my lecture have impact? This is the first time I put questions inside the lecture. I have to test. Next time I have media, I'll put it outside. It has decreased. The percentage have decreased, but the number hasn't decreased so much because the population is growing. The population is growing. And how do you get out of extreme poverty? Extreme poverty is you don't have food for the day. And you get out of that, you are still poor. And then you have to get away to it because so many people fall back into poverty. Sometimes we think about poverty, oh, it's a poor person, they're sitting there poor every year, they ask for aid, nothing happens. This is not the case. They work very hard. In July they get out of poverty, and then in October they have a terrible accident and they are back in poverty. Or they are out of poverty and next year they lose their harvest and they are back in poverty. It's a very big back and forward in that line. You need to get away from poverty, not to fall back. This is deep poverty. I spent 20 years with African institution researching a disease linked to extreme poverty in Africa. I have the permission of these families to show this photo, otherwise I couldn't show it. And they don't have clothes for the day. She borrowed that sack to be able to come out to show. This is extreme poverty. This is the same disease. And here, to me, is also extreme poverty. 2 girls carrying water instead of going to school. That's extreme poverty. Extreme poverty is not having food, not going to school, not having clothes, not having a proper house. This is extreme poverty. And look at Mrs. Tapo. She has a wheelbarrow. She can now take here 1, 2, 3. The girls are gone to school. Isn't the Industrial Revolution fantastic? She doesn't need, ecology won't bring them. The most ecological people there is those in deep poverty. They don't use any fertilizer because they can't afford it. And then they can get out of it. So distinguish extreme poverty from the rest. And when you get out of it, women are very clear. This is one of the women who summarize our 20 years research. She says, She says, I went to school, I got a healthy child, my husband works in town to earn money, I need my human rights, I need my agricultural technology, the investment in the road is fine, we have a cell phone, I'm going to sell this at the market, but really I want a job. You know, there are many different things together that takes her away from poverty. That was, here it is. School, equal rights, health planning, health and family planning, agrotechnology, credits, infrastructure, cell phones, going to market, but really she wants a job. And her dream is land rights, fertilizer and electricity. This is a sort of very clear, and it's many different things. When we discuss the world and poverty, you are favorable, oh, it's all about human rights. Yeah, human rights is very important. It's all about family planning. No, not all, but very much. Agrotechnology, microcredits. If you are a banker and the sort of right wing, you love microcredits. But she likes everything. She likes everything that transforms her life. And it can be like this. We can get all the people out of poverty. I jumped that one. This is what is happening in Africa today. But before showing that, I will swap over and show you something here. This is a new data set which we have put together. At Gapminder, we consider ourselves a museum. We are not an analytical think tank or anything. We try to teach. And then we do like when you put the dinosaur skeleton on display. If the hind legs are missing, 2 legs are missing, you put plastic legs. And you write a little sign. 2 legs were missing, so we made them all plastic. You don't put this dinosaur skeleton with only 2 legs and write a sign, 2 legs are missing. We think it had 4 legs, because then the children go home and say, dinosaur have 2 legs. There's no way. You have to put fake legs. But you note that you have fake legs. So we put together a data set with income distribution of all countries in the world the last 200 years. Have never been done before. We went to economic history, we went to different places, and then we put it all together. Look, here you have $1 a day, you have $10 a day, $100 a day, $1,000 a day. And this is Africa, America, Asia, and Europe. Look, down there, Africa and America are so small, 1800s, you can't even see them. It's all dominated by Asia. And now Europe get rich and rush away, and America is following Europe. Can you see? Getting richer and richer. And Africa and Asia is there. And here, when I went to school, the world was really divided. Asia and Africa here, with parts of Latin America, North America and Europe was here. And then it went on and it came like this. So if I add the world, I will show you something. I go here and I add the world. Up, that was Europe, the world. Here, the world is the summary. In 1960 here, we had the camel world. You can recognize the camel? The rich and the poor, developed and developing, West and the rest. That's when it was engraved in our mind that there are 2 types of countries. They had low child mortality and few children. They have high child mortality and many children. But look what has happened. It's not only that the world got richer, the whole pattern changed. The camel world is gone. And the terrible thing is that often we discuss it here. Here's the poor people. The one in extreme poverty, a little more than $1. And the proportion have fallen, but the numbers stay more or less the same. We don't manage to get the poor with us into the future. And that is the #1 on the new list of development goals in the world in the future. It is not sustainable use of resources. It's get away extreme poverty from the face of the earth. And then move on, people on in a sustainable way from that. But the extreme poverty is a very special thing. Now, wait a minute there, we should be. So if I go back, I can show you this very clearly in Africa. Percent in extreme poverty in sub-Saharan Africa, 51%, 58%, 48%. What a good news, isn't it? It is really, everyone agrees that it's not only fast economic growth for the richest. The percent in poverty is falling in Africa, but look at the numbers. 10 years ago, it was like 370 million, now it's more. The number in poverty is increasing at the same time as the percentage is falling because the population is growing. And 25% of the women in sub-Saharan Africa have no access to family planning, but they want it. They walk to the health center and there's no contraceptives there. Because their governments and the international community and the media have let them down and talk about other things today. And when we talk about family planning, it's like controlling population for environmental reasons. But that's not what we should. We should concentrate on that as a right for the women to fight a situation where they can fall back into extreme poverty. This needs to be finished in this part of the world. Now, so the income distribution looked like this. You recognize this world. If I put the 7 billion, I started with people, and then I talked about money. I put the 7 billion there, and I tell you that this is gross national income per capita, $500, $5,000, and $50,000. The difference between the richest countries and the poorest country in the world is 100-fold in income level. That's why it's so difficult. So don't think about poor countries. I hear many saying, in Africa there are women dying in deliveries and children don't go to school because the rich don't give priority. There are so many countries in Africa which are just too poor to provide social service. And people don't compare Tanzania with Sri Lanka, because Sri Lanka is 5-fold richer than Tanzania. It's this idea, analyzing out of a developing world concept, that makes you not realize those huge differences. Look here. Tanzania, China, US. This is the way to look at it. The poorest 1 billion have $500. Then it doubled to 1,000, doubled to 2, doubled to 4, doubled to 8, doubled to 16, doubled to 32. There are 6 doublings. So if you want to know how it's poor, you half your salary. And you half it again, 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 and you half it one final time. That's poverty. Just imagine doing the fast halving of your salary. That's painful. Not imagining the next 5 halving of it. It's so difficult to understand the range we have. And yet most of the people are somewhere in the middle, at a relatively decent way. Now, energy. Can you vote on this one? What is the percent of world energy that comes from solar and wind power? You all know that solar and wind have great potential. Yeah? Come on, I get 60 there. Thank you. And this is this is you. This is United Kingdom. Yeah, your relative knowledge. It's 1%. The huge overestimation of solar. Solar power is, you remember the growing? Remember? I am solar power. It's a new thing in the world. I'm very small, but I'm growing, I'm growing, I'm growing, I'm growing. I'm just 1%. We mix up the growth of solar energy, which is fantastic, and that most of us like, and especially me. And what it has achieved. The world is run on fossil fuel. 81% is fossil fuel. Solar is very little. And what has happened to the carbon dioxide emission in the world? Has it doubled the last 30 years? Is it the same, or has it decreased to half? What has happened the last 30 years when we have been discussing the climate? Yes. I'll see if I can do like this. We stop it there. And then we see what the Swedes thought. The Swedes thought it had doubled, so they did there. And this is you. Now you want the right answer? It's the same. It's the same. I'll show you why. I'll show you why. From poorest to the richest. This is the oil we use today. This is the coal. This is the gas. This is nuclear. That's bio and hydro. And here I come, little solar and wind. I am the future. But still just 1%. I'm not making fun of sun. It really is the future. It has a great potential. If stupid Europe stopped putting tariff on Chinese solar panel especially. But now the question is, how is the fossil fuel divided across the 7 billion? How much of the fossil fuel is used by the richest 1 billion? It's half. How much does the 2nd billion take? Half. How much does the 3rd take? Half. How much does the 4th take, or what remains? Half. How much does the 5th take, or what remains? Half. And then these ones have to take what's left. You see how stupid it becomes to think about developing world? You have this continue all the way. It's a continuous world. It's not a camel world any longer. We have this. And why hasn't it increased? Because those 2 billions, this one and this one, were added in the last 30 years. And the population growth, they used less fossil fuel. They emitted less carbon dioxide than the average of the world. So the population growth has lowered the average. And then these ones have not increased, but these ones have increased. You see how you can think that carbon dioxide emission per person is increasing, but it's not, because most of the people who contribute to the population growth, they emit less than the average. This is the nuke. This is the bio. I thought that was very beautiful, wasn't it? I did that one myself. That solar is there. And here we have the death of children. 7 million tragic deaths of children today. And that's 7 million too much. How are they distributed? The poorest 1 billion have almost half, or little more than half of those. The next billion from the bottom have 2. And the next 2 billion have 1. This is the world today. Child death is skewed to the poorest people in absolute poverty. Fossil fuel emission is skewed here, and in between you have 3 billion, the majority of the world population, with low child death and not much fossil fuel. This is a much clearer, much more fact-based worldview. They have open fire to cook. They have a bulb. They have a washing machine. They can fly to conferences in Helsinki, or they can go for holiday. This is how they have it. This is energy in extreme poverty. She doesn't grow old like this. She wants to get out of it. She wants the new world. This is the energy consumption. Coal, oil and gas is 81%. Solar is so small you can't even see it. It doesn't even provide a pixel yet. Who managed to get that dip? Can you see that was a dip? Was it Al Gore who took it down like this? No, it was the best politician for the environment we've ever had, George W. Bush, together with the Lehman Brothers, of course. They crashed the economy. The only decrease we see in fossil fuel is due to the crash of the economy. There is indeed, the rich countries don't increase. That is a good thing. They've stopped increasing, but they don't decrease. And this, we see now more gas coming. We hope more sun will come. But this changed very, very slowly, very, very slowly. I jump that one because I go for the photo here. After having crushed the economy in the fall of 2008, George Bush needed money. Should I buy a bank? Should I put money in the car industry? I'm the government. He said, no, you have to. But that's communism. No, you have to. So he went for the pocket and he had no money. There was a hole in the pocket. Bush, how do you do when you have no money? You ask your friends. So he went and asked George Brown, Merkel and Sarkozy, and they said, we have no money. We have the same problem. Our economy went down also. Now what do? You have no money, your friends have no money. You need new friends. That's why you had the G20 meeting. He couldn't have the old friends because they were gone. Remember the map? West Europe and North America, that's where the crisis is now. The rest of the world is growing. So he needed friends. And this is the final photo. I think it will be in the history book in the future. That's why I bought it and I acquired this so I can show it. It's even Strauss-Kahn. Remember Strauss-Kahn before he was arrested there? Yes, I even think there is an Italian president here, yes, who was in court yesterday. It's quite interesting. There are two men on the same photo doing the same thing. So much for... It's embarrassing how right the feminists are, isn't it? So the ones who stood next to him is, of course, those who lended most money to him. There was a lot. These photos I've learned, I have some contacts, so I learned there's a lot of discussion who shall stand where on the photo. So those who stand next to Bush is the one who saved the American and the European economy. And who were they? It was a socialist, a communist, and 2 Muslims. And you see Sarkozy here. Why am France on this side of the communist and the Muslim, he says, It's very uncomfortable. This is the new world. It's the camel world is gone, It's a new way we have to manage the world. Turkey, India, Mexico, Indonesia is also there. Gapminder try to contribute. Our idea is that we should help people to upgrade your worldview. And we say, Bush did it. All can do it. Welcome. Thank you. Are there any protests, or would you? I very much like protest or critique. Huh? Yes. Stop. Okay.
Now we have two questions, then we have to move on with the next plenary. It's very late. And please, 2 questions allowed, and you have to wear a microphone because this session is streamed. Thank you.
Neil Byrne, Science in Public in Melbourne. Do you have any measures?
Yes, don't touch it.
Don't touch his
computer. Sorry, you can take this away, but don't touch it. I'm going to save the results there. Yeah.
Do you have any measures or any guesses of world optimism? I ask that because in Australia,
of world
optimism. So, for example, in Australia, we're affluent. We came through the recession pretty well. But we seem to be quite miserable. We're about to chuck out a perfectly decent government. We're really well off. We've got lots of time on the beach. And we're grumpy. And Europe's kind of seems to be dissatisfied. Where are the optimistic people in the world? Is there can you measure that?
No, I don't do it. It's a problem when you have washing machine and you can fly on holiday, then you start to think about happiness index. The progress, the aim of life is to come to a country where you bother about happiness index. I can appreciate it. I would like to say that the most difficult is to know where countries like the Nordic countries, Australia and New Zealand are going, because no one has ever been there before. So then you put these sort of questions. I do the easy stuff. Remember I said I was lazy and smart? I do the easy stuff. That is really difficult, you know, how to keep them coherent. I integrated Australia, made it an Asian country of these maps, as you may have noted, because the Australian economy is now primary material being exported to Asia. No, I don't have an answer. I don't have an answer.
Richard Zorowski, Mount St. Vincent University, Canada. My question is that you assume that the paradigm is that we have an unlimited amount of time, looking at your statistics. But the climate problem has a limited amount of time. So even though the CO2 per capita remains the same and that the wealth on average of people is increasing, we have only 15 years before we fall off a financial cliff, or sorry, an environmental cliff. How does that work into your work, that in 15 years our environment is not sustainable?
I didn't have time for that graph with carbon dioxide, now it's gone. So what I say is that it's the richest 1 billion and very soon the richest 2 billion that constitute the problem. They emit too much carbon dioxide. They had to more than half it as soon as possible, because the other ones is not going to stay low. That is the number one. I have a quite analytic way of climate change, and 15 years may be when we get it. It may also take longer time, but what the climate researchers tell me is that the change is almost certain. It's as certain as you can be. But we don't know the speed in which it will be coming. And we don't know how hard and in what way it will hit where. This is much more difficult to say. And that's projections. And that we can see now that the ice went before the surface temperature. And it seems that extreme changes are more prominent. We just don't know what will happen, that it will change. And I think that African agriculture may be hit by increased oil price before it's hit severely by climate crisis. Climate crisis is indeed the worst environmental problem into the future. But there's also a tendency in activism, for good reasons, to overestimate its present effect, and thereby luring people to think that it won't be too bad. You know, it won't be just the sandy now and then, you know, and a little problem. It was interesting that Calgary got this. Alberta has the highest emission of carbon dioxide in the world. They are 50% higher than Qatar, if you just take the Alberta population. And thank you, Statistic Canada, for providing carbon dioxide emission per state. It's interesting that the whole oil sand there, and then they got hit themselves. I think it is much more than 15 years, and this is the problem. The problem is that we cannot make the decision based on what we see happening. We must make the decision on reducing carbon dioxide or what is a high probability that it will happen. I have had discussion with Al Gore intensively about this, and he wanted me to make bubbles for him and so on. And I had to say, Mr. Vice President, no number, no bubble. So it's a problem, and I think the focus can I give a private statement? I don't need polar bears. I don't use polar bears. My grandkids won't use polar bears. I think many of the arguments for the climate change is counterproductive for the vast majority of the people in the world. Because it's so severe, but it's severe more in 15 years into the future. That's what the real bad things come. So we are really up to a dilemma on it. And sadly enough, I see that the Politburo in China is better of handling that risk than the democracies in West Europe and North America. This is to me very sad, because I was brought up wanting to die for democracy. So indeed, that is sort of a lecture of itself. But what I just wanted to show here is how short we have come. Not to get that impression that we have solar energy now. Not to give the impression that we are on the way of solving it. We haven't started yet. It's just play works did. And the idea of the richest pointing at Africa don't emit more, and at India, who have such a modest emission. Bangladesh, I know by heart, 0.16 ton per person. 40 years ago, Norway emitted 7 tons per person of carbon dioxide, and Bangladesh emitted 7 children per woman. Today, Bangladesh emits 2 children per woman, and Norway still emits 7 tons. Where is the problem? The problem is that the richest doesn't change themselves.
Thank you. That's a very good final. Let's give a great applause. So may I ask the talkers from the next plenary a bit late, so could you please come here? I'm Satu Lipponen, I'm the president of FASE and this World Conference, and I will be moderating this session. And please give your voting devices to the volunteers you see here. Thank you, Hans Rostling. You are very much and above of your reputation, and the world is coming together. That is definitely very positive news. And the rich countries need to change their habits. That's also a very good topic for us to discuss. And now we will have only a couple of minutes. I will give away this microphone soon. And I will be introducing our plenary speaker. Yes, our first speaker, plenary speaker of the morning is Professor Juha Kere. He has received his MD in 1984, PhD in 1989, and specialty in clinical genetics in 1994 from the University of Helsinki. He is currently professor of molecular genetics at Karolinska Institute at Stockholm, Sweden, and Dr. Kere supervises research groups at both Karolinska Institute and University of Helsinki. He has previously served as professor at the University of Helsinki and Turku in Finland. He was postdoctoral fellow at Washington University School of Medicine, St. Louis, Missouri, and he was working on early phase of the Human Genome Project. His current research focuses on common complex disorders such as asthma, psoriasis, and dyslexia. Please welcome Professor Kere.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and I guess we don't need a sound check. It sounds as if everybody is hearing. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is a scientist's dream come true. It is a beautiful day in Helsinki, and I'm standing in the main hall of the University Helsinki building. And hundreds of the world's most influential science editors and science journalists have come to listen to me. So what could I ask for more? There is one problem, and the problem is that I'm not here to talk about my research. That is not what I've been invited to do here. Instead, I'm invited to talk about problems in communicating about research, and that's a whole different topic. It poses some problems to me. But let me start. I can't resist the temptation to show a little bit of what we are doing for research as a way of introducing myself a little bit. So what you are watching here is a video of a human embryo. This is a human embryo 3 days old after fertilization. It consists of 8 cells at the moment. And so you see the setup to the left. It's under a microscope, and the video is being taken by the microscope presently. There is laser shooting going on, so this is exciting. Laser shooting is going on, and what the purpose of the laser shooting is to make this zona pellucida surrounding the cells a little bit weaker. So now we change the optics. You see the so-called holding pipette here that keeps this human embryo in place, and now something very unusual will happen. This is a suction pipette, and we will start and take out all the 8 cells separately from this human embryo. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. We got all the cells out from the human embryo, intact, whole, none broke. And what happened next to these cells is that we move them to tiny wells on a microtiter plate, and we take them back to the laboratory. And we will study gene expression on each of these cells separately. And in fact, we have done that already for more than 330 cells from different stages of the human development for the first 3 days. And I would love to talk about this at some other point, but now we are talking about the problems in science communication. So the title of my talk is Unfounded Fear or Hype, Communicating Risk and Progress. I said that I have problems with this presentation because this is not what I usually talk about. So I also ventured to move to entirely new ways of showing things. And so
our results show that this newly
I become a movie director.
Is very important for cancer development.
That is very interesting. But
let's start over.
And so our results show that this newly identified gene is very important for cancer development.
That is very interesting. But so what does this gene mean for cancer risk in those who carry the risk form?
Well, it increases the risk by 30%. But should I remind her that smoking increases the risk by many tenfolds? So it is much more important to stop smoking than worry about the gene.
Oh, by 30%. That is remarkable. Should we all take a gene test now?
In fact, I don't think it is necessary. I don't think that we could offer a useful gene test. But the finding may help us to find a new medication.
Oh, no gene test. So what's in it for my readers? How can I make this interesting? Who is going to get excited about a gene without a gene test?
This is extra normal life. And of course, we have the acknowledgements here. So let's move to the next
our results have really elucidated the way this disease develops. In the future, we can move to a systems biology understanding of the disease process in much more detail.
Dr. Jones, all that you have told me is very interesting. I have one last question to ask you about your research.
I hope he is not going to ask the same question that I get every time I am talking of our research. I am tired of the question about when we have the cure for the disease.
And so my last question to you, Dr. Jones, is when do we have a cure for the disease? When can we buy an effective medication?
So again, well, to be honest with you, it will take yet another 10 or 20 years. That is how long it takes to develop a medication that has passed all the safety testing and other requirements.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jones. But what can I say about the medication?
Well, I don't think I will make it to the galas with these movies, but nevertheless, the topics that I'm going to talk about today deal with the problems about communicating about risks. So we have now, in many studies, many research that we do, we we find genes or behaviors or environmental factors that may be harmful or beneficial to people. But it is very, very difficult to talk about these to the general public, because it is very, very difficult to know when the numbers are, in fact, very low. The risk numbers are often very low. So why is it important? Why does it matter? Another topic that I wanted to talk about is communicating about progress. And so this is the problem that was shown in the second movie. So you often, when you present your results, they may be a big breakthrough for the field. And I will show you an example later of what this really has been in the past. But it may take 10 years or 20 years or 30 years that these news become news for the consumer or for the lay audience. And so again, what is exciting here? How should I communicate about this to the readers? Where is the news here? And then the third topic that I wanted to touch upon is the new interest in the quantified self and the new focus on health. And so here the point is that people are increasingly concerned about health-related issues, and so in fact people increasingly want to read and learn about health-related things. And I think that this view agrees very well with what Hans was explaining about how the world is turning now. We have fewer and fewer children, and people have more and more money to spend on things. And of course, it is for everybody, it's the health that is of prime importance. Well, the world has changed. Not only the ways that the population has changed, but we also have the new technologies. And of course, the newest phones are there. So 1978 was when I finished my school and went to university. Now we are in 2013, that is 35 years. And now there is no way of knowing how the world will look like for technology in 35 years from now. I don't think that anybody would venture to guess. Well, the world has also changed in other ways. I would dare to say that the communication landscape was a little bit simpler before. There was printed press, and so the story went from the scientist to the journalist and then to the public. This is how it used to be. Now the world is different. Not only different because of social media that has made all these arrows two-directional, but the world is also different even for scientific publishing. And so when I started doing scientific publishing, what usually happened was that we got the manuscript ready. We sent it to the editors of a journal that we thought would be interested in it. And then it was sent to reviewers who reviewed it and then sent their constructive comments and criticism back. And then the editor rejected the paper because there was there was lack of space in the journal. So there was competition for space, and so even a good paper wasn't published. So then we sent it to another journal, and the same process repeated itself, maybe another time, and maybe the third time the editor thought that, okay, so maybe your paper is good enough, we will print it. And that was science journalism, or science publishing then. So that changed maybe a few years ago, perhaps 5 years ago. So in this new world of scientific publishing, what happened was that we sent the paper the same way to an editor. Now the editor took the decision that this is not going to be interesting for our readers. So the editor sent it back. And so this was worse than before, because before we got at least the reviewers' comments. We got somebody commenting on how good our paper is or was, and then we could do something about it. And now, the same process now, instead of repeating it 2 or 3 times, we repeat this 5 or 6 times. Well, then became the new change, which is very, very welcome, and that is open access publishing. And so what happened was that now we send the paper to an open access publisher who gets it reviewed, it gets improved based on the positive criticism, and then it gets published. And I don't need to send it again to a third and fourth and sixth journal. So the world has become better. But now it's also very, very clear that we have lots of different kinds of readers for everything, and there are lots of different kinds of scientists as well. Well, in the meantime, when the world population has been doing its important changes, also molecular biology has undergone very, very significant changes. And I would dare to say that this change has also been underestimated. So in 1978, 35 years ago, we had the recombinant DNA technologies, and Nobel Prizes were given for that. DNA sequencing had been invented, and the first biotechnology products made in bacteria for human treatment had already been invented. So there was insulin produced in bacteria. Instead of cleaning insulin hormone from bovine and swine pancreas tissue, it was produced in bacteria, human form of insulin. So now this year we have been celebrating the 10th anniversary of the human genome sequencing, and we have thousands of disease genes defined, and we have transgenic organisms with the appropriate Nobel Prize for that. But we have started to have individual genome sequencing, metagenome sequencing, looking at the environmental bacteria and microorganisms, and we have the single cell sequencing that I showed you the movie about in the beginning. So we can look at how cells work on a single cell resolution. And that is remarkable. And where are we going in 35 years? Nobody knows. But what is the biggest change that has made much of what is going to come in the future? What has made that possible is the invention of high throughput DNA sequencing, or next generation sequencing, or massively parallel sequencing. And so current instruments can produce 1 human genome a day. And the cost of an individual genome has dropped now to 4,000 euros or $5,000. This is what it costs. This is the revolution in DNA sequencing. This is from the pages of the National Institute of Health, the Human Genome Research Institute. So what happened here was that this was when the Human Genome Project was started. This was when the Human Genome Project was about ended. 2001 was the first draft published. 2003 was the final draft for the human genome published. And then there was a little drop in the cost of sequencing, and that was probably caused by the excess machine capacity that was kind of freed and made available all of a sudden. But about 2007, what happened was that this massively parallel sequencing technology was introduced, commercialized, and after that, the cost started dropping tremendously. This is the so-called Moore's law for computers. So this basically says that you get more and more computer power per your spent dollar or euro all the time, and this is the curve that shows that. But this is what the DNA sequencing cost has been experiencing. There has been a 100,000-fold drop in DNA sequencing costs over the period of 5 years. There is no other modern technology, no communication technology, no nothing that is comparable to this drop. And I would argue that this will have a big impact of how biology will start to impact on how we see the world if we can continue to have the economic kind of circumstances to continue doing this. So now to the actual topics, communicating about risks. So with these new technologies, microarray technologies and the sequencing, it has become possible to look at genetic risks, even for common and complex disorders. let me cite an example about breast cancer and genetic risks for breast cancer. There is a gene called fibroblast growth factor receptor 2, or FGFR2, and in a couple of studies published 5 years ago, 2007, 6 years ago, it was revealed that one of the most important risk factors for developing breast cancer, and now we are not talking about inherited breast cancer, we are just talking about all breast cancer in women. The most important gene is this one. It has a tremendously high p-value, so this means that when we say that that we don't make a mistake here, if we say that we don't make a mistake, that is pretty credible, because the chance of making a mistake is 1 out of a number that has 75 digits or zeros. So the risk is tremendously low. But the risk is 1.2. So it means there is a 20% increase in those individuals who possess this particular variant compared to the average. 20% increase. So is this 20% increase important or not? This is very big news. We can now understand why this gene might be causing or involving breast cancer. And a lot of research is going into that. Well, let's compare this risk figure with something. Here is the risk of smoking for lung cancer. This is UK statistics from Cancer Research UK. And so you see that the risk of developing lung cancer if you smoke is several tenfold. So it's thousands of percent, not 20%, thousands of percent. There is a big difference between the genetic risks. When we talk about genetic risks, we talk about fractions, small increases. When we talk about smoking, we talk about tenfold, tens of fold increases. So if we want to reduce cancer, we need to reduce smoking. The message is very, very clear. But how does this compare to other kinds of risks in life? So this is data from Finland. In Finland, the risk of death in traffic is tenfold compared to sitting at your workplace. So we are all very safe now because we are here working. You go out and your risk increases tenfold because you will be in traffic. Well, leisure is relatively safe. If you sit home or whatever you do there, it's only twofold risk compared to being at work. So we should all work harder because that is the safest thing for us to do. Nothing is as safe. Well, for biking, many people like biking because that is also, it's good for your health. You get motion and you get fresh air and whatnot. Well, that's all good, but you should keep in mind that it's best to do only sober. Don't do biking if you drink. Don't drive, don't bike, because if you have just 0.2 per mil blood alcohol content, it's half a bottle of beer. You have increased your risk of death or serious injury by 6-fold. It's far bigger risk than any genetic risk for the common complex disorders. So how could we relate these things? How can we communicate about this to the public? I don't know the answer. I hope that you know the answer because you are the communicators of these findings. I'm just a primary producer. I'm just like, I'm the farmer who is growing the stuff in the field. And then I harvest it and send it to the publishers. But then you are the bakers who make the buns and breads out of this stuff and then serve it to the public. So I'm just asking questions. I'm a scientist. So not only have we gotten this breast cancer stuff, but we have a number of genetic risk factors. A very, very popular way of doing these studies in the past 6 years or so have been genome-wide association studies, or GWAS studies. And so there are now nearly 1,500 published studies for clearly more than 200 different traits. Here is a list of those, and there are lots of different human laboratory measures and phenotypic features, lots of different things. You find your topic of interest. There is narcolepsy, there is hair color, melanoma, psoriasis, blood pressure, bladder cancer, birth weight, and so forth. Stroke, suicide attempts have been subjected to genome-wide association studies. But what may be big news for a scientist with these genes may require 10 years or more to become real news to the consumer. So where is the news with these? Let's take one example. This is one of the biggest success stories of modern molecular biology research. Now, it's a little bit difficult to compare this past success story with the success stories that we are waiting to appear now. But this is the story of a drug called imatinib, or Gleevec. So it all started in 1960 when chromosomes had been discovered, and Peter Noel and Alice Hungerford were looking at chromosomes in leukemic patients. And they discovered a small chromosome that they called the Philadelphia chromosome at the time in myeloid leukemia. It took 13 years at the time for Janet Rowley to discover that this is in fact results from the change of parts between two chromosomes, so-called translocation. Translocation between chromosome number 9 and 22. And so it took yet another 11 years to figure out what was going on the molecular level with this. And so then a large group of scientists discovered that in fact this chromosome translocation leads to the positioning of two genes next to each other that are not supposed normally to be together, and that results in a mutant gene and protein that has malignant activating activity. And then it took only 7 years for the pharmaceutical industry to figure out a drug that would inhibit this activator and make the cells turn back to normal. And this was a miracle drug when it was discovered, a true miracle drug. And then later on it has been discovered that this miracle drug also works on other similar activating proteins. And so gastrointestinal stromal tumors, GIST tumors, have also been benefiting from the very same drug. Now, going back to the genome-wide association studies, this is the increase of these genome-wide association studies that have been looking at these common complex disorders. So, compared to this story, it took from 1960 to 1984, 24 years to figure out what was going on, and then 7 years to get the drug. Here, because of the modern tools of sequencing and so forth, it will not take that long to figure out what is the mechanism, what is going on when you have this risk gene. And so the expectation of scientists for the time being is that a large fraction of these stories will be turned into new drug stories, new miracle drugs that will change how these common complex disorders are being treated. And at the same time, the populations are getting healthier all around the planet. And so I guess that these people will be interested in this. And here is the new focus. people have started to quantify themselves. This is now the combination of the information technologies and also these biotechnologies that lead to the discovery of these risk genes and risk effects that you may have in your body. So what people do now, but what the leaders, kind of thought leaders in populations have started to do, they have started measuring themselves. So they have little gadgets in their pockets, like telephones, that can measure where they are, how much they move, with what speed do they move. So with intelligent applications, apps, you can figure out whether you are biking or swimming or walking or just sleeping. You can put the little stripe under your bed sheet, and then that will record your movements during the night. It can figure out when you have good sleep and when you have bad sleep, and it can figure out lots of things that you do in the bed if you are not careful enough. So you can have a little app on your telephone that you tap that I'm going to have a glass of water and so forth, and I can tap all the things that I'm eating. I can have a program in my computer that records my tapping speed, for example, and the use of programs. The purpose is not to spy myself. The purpose is to quantify how well I work. So maybe I take a cup of coffee, and then I realize that after having a cup of coffee, my typing speed has increased 20%. That would be a remarkable productivity, and combining that with the information that having a few cups of coffee increases the longevity. I think that I will start drinking a little bit more coffee. I'm already to 6 cups, so I don't know if I can increase more. And then of course sleep, and then you go to lab, you have the regular blood tests. And then you can of course read your own genome. There are companies now, I should not mention any company names, but you may have heard of some companies that have been founded, for example, by the family members of some very strong and powerful search engines that, for example, provide readouts of your genome and with a lot of information about your risks based on that. Well, those estimates are not very good because the risk numbers, as I have been explaining, they are very small. So with these small risk increases, you don't get very good estimates yet for your health. But nevertheless, people do get their own genomes. And then they gather all that information to the portable gadget, your telephone, your pad or whatever. The information is stored and processed in a cloud database. And then what you get is that you can monitor your own habits, you can design better exercise programs, you can share this with your friends, of course, and you can together decide that let's lose weight, let's get down 5 kilograms before summer so that we are in shape for the beach. And you can share that information with your personal trainer. And I'm a medical doctor, so what I think this will be useful for is that when you go to a doctor, you take your recordings with you and show, look, I'm a little bit worried now because my blood pressure has started to go up a little bit more than what it used to be, and maybe we should do something about this. And how do you get that blood pressure? Well, because you have a little training gadget around your wrist when you do jogging and so forth, and it gets your... And also for hospital visits. So what this is going to... what I think is that this is going to lead to is that there are many possible benefits. This will give self-motivation to healthier habits. You can have customized health programs. You can have early warning signs of disease. If you monitor constantly your weight and your blood pressure and your pulse and your whatnot, also regular lab measures when you visit the doctor, you get improved communication with physicians. And it could lead to lower healthcare costs, optimally. This might be one of the tools that would reduce the healthcare costs for these educated, well-reading populations. But of course it can go wrong as well. We can become neurotically focused on ourselves. We can lose all the fun in life when we are just measuring everything. It could lead to health terrorism. So other people come and tell you what you should be doing about that. And so, as with the banking machines, the population will be divided to those who are happy to use the card and those who don't know how to use the card. And here there is a risk of neglecting the people who don't want to engage themselves in this way. And so there will be perhaps a little bit division of people to those who are interested in and those who don't care. But I would argue that here in this changing world, there is also a very important role for science journalists. So how you choose to view on these things, how you choose to communicate about these things, will matter a lot for how people will view this in the future. This is an emerging technology. And you are the key influential people to form people's minds about this. So, I guess you face these problems. What is important to communicate? You have to make choices. Whose point of view should I take in choosing what I talk about? How do I balance my message? So a scientist might say that this is a remarkable breakthrough finding. We have found a gene that explains a few % of this lethal cancer. And that may be a breakthrough finding. But it may take yet another 10 years before the drug is kind of designed based on that information. The public will ask, what's there for me? Should I care about this? And so your question is, what should I choose to tell and who will read that? Okay, I think that I'll just end here and leave you with the open questions. I did not provide answers, but I hope that I provided some views of how the world is changing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Kere. Is it on? Can you hear me? No. Can I have a microphone? Yes, thank you, Professor Kere. For the time constraints, we will be allowing questions after the 3 talks, and I will now introduce our next speaker. She is Deborah Blum, and she is a Pulitzer Prize-winning science journalist, a Wired blogger, and an author of 5 books. Most recently, the New York Times bestseller, The Poisoner's Handbook. She writes for publications ranging from the New York Times to Scientific American. She is the Helen Firstbrook Franklin Professor of Journalism at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, USA. And I know that many of you know Deborah personally, and she has always something important to share with us, and this is an ethics session. So, Deborah, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I'm going to talk very fast since we're running behind time, and Ulla who is following me, has a great presentation. So I wanted to start by talking about what I think of as the ethical journalist. Since this is a, can you hear me? No. No. Let's see. It says it's on, but you're not hearing me, right? Hand me that mic, would you? And I'll just do it that way. How about now? No. It's on. No, it's not on. Well, I'm going to yell. Okay.
So,
is that on?
Is that on? No. We have a microphone problem here, please.
I would be talking then. Try here. That would be genius.
Okay. Can you see the presentation? You cannot see the presentation.
I'll look behind it. How about that? Okay. I did want to stand here, so this is working well for me. So I'm going to talk very quickly. This is a presentation that is focused on ethics. So I was thinking, and you wouldn't expect it when you see my chemophobia thing to think, oh, she's going to talk about ethics. But I was thinking about how we define the ethical journalist. And being a journalist who cares about ethics is not only that we want to get it right, that we want to tell it well, that we want to make it compelling, but I think for a lot of us there's a sort of two subtexts. They certainly work for me. And one is that at a fundamental level, I often think about science literacy. I'm a chemistry blogger. People do not follow me in the street saying, please, Deborah, tell me more stories about chemistry. So I have to really think about the ways that I want to help build a more chemistry literate world. I see that as part of the mission of what I do. So there's that missionary sense of how they do this. And the other thing I think we often end up doing as journalists, and you certainly see me doing that here, is specializing. So you say, but I can illuminate this one aspect really well. I can be an all-purpose science writer. I can tell many stories of science. But right here, I can shed the kind of light I want to shed. So I've been writing about chemistry for about 5 years now. I write mostly about poisonous things, lots and lots of poisonous things. And you would think then that I might be standing here telling you that I am afraid of chemicals, but the effect of writing about very poisonous things has had an opposite effect on me, and that is that I tend to think, why don't we worry about the poisonous things that are really dangerous and keep being afraid of and stop being afraid of all things chemical. And it's that effect, both in the media and in society, that I want to talk about a little bit today. I hope this is going to work. Yes. So, this, believe it or not, this is an actual ad. Don't drink from the periodic table. It was put out by an American refrigerator company advertising filtered water with, I assume, the idea that if you filtered your water, there would be nothing left from the periodic table in that water, which would be really tricky because then you would be drinking nothing, right? And I think we see these messages in the media all the time, that chemicals are evil, that chemicals are scary, that everything in the periodic table is a really bad thing. I'm going to come down for a minute just so that I can point. So if you look at the periodic table, everyone should really study this every day. You'll see hydrogen up here at the top left, and you'll see oxygen up there to the right in that top green row. And as we all know, you cannot drink unless you involve the periodic table because those two things come together and make water. But what we tend to see is this kind of attitude toward chemistry, which is sort of scaremongering chemistry. And everyone knows what this is, right? So dihydrogen monoxide is just another way of saying H2O, which is just another way of saying water. Two hydrogens, dihydrogen, one oxygen, monoxide. Dihydrogen monoxide is only water. And you see, chemists often put these up to make fun of the rest of us. But you see this assumption, and this is the kind of thing that I think journalistically, when we're saying, oh, I want to help build a science-literate society, that we just sort of try to sock out. Because the fact is that most of us do not, including myself, do not have a fantastic, I'm going to go into the laboratory and do wonderful chemical things kind of background. I don't have that. And it's way too easy for people to accept these kinds of messages, or to see just a name like that, dihydrogen monoxide, and assume it's something really scary. And because of that, come on, baby. What? You actually see public campaigns that involve an acceptance of our lack of knowledge of chemistry. Do you see this sign here that is warning people to stay out of the water because there's hydrogen in it? Right? This was an actual public risk campaign run by a city in Kentucky. And the real problem with the water was that it was bacterially contaminated. There were all kinds of horrible bacteria growing in this water. But they made the assumption that far scarier to people than some pathogenic microbe would be the presence of a chemical. And so they put these signs up warning people that there were hydrogen in the water. And this was widely repeated through the newspapers of the time. Do not get in the water, it might contain gas, hydrogen. So we see these messages out there all the time that play what I think on as a generalized chemophobia. And it's a problem, and this is the problem. If you are swimming around in a generalized chemophobia, then you cannot differentiate for yourself the things that are really dangerous and the things that are not. You are freaking out about hydrogen in your water, which is supposed to be there anyway, and you're not worrying about, say, the cholera bacteria that's swimming through it. And I think that starts to become, in terms of public health, a really dangerous message, and one that we as journalists need to try to work again. Oops, did I go past that? Yes. Come on. There. This is a slide put together by a friend of mine who is a chemist. Chemists make fun of us. I mean, I hate to admit it, but chemists make fun of us quite a bit. And this is a slide that is a calculation of how many numbers and letters are in a chemical formula, and the amount of fear that is directly proportional to the number of chemicals and letters. This is not a serious slide. If you look at its, the title of the journal is JFAYK. If you look that up in line, you'll find that the full title of the journal, it's called the Journal of Are You Fucking Kidding Me? And it's put together by scientists, run by a chemist who's now in Nebraska, Ray Burks, but to really look at journalistic coverage of some of these issues, primarily in chemistry, but sometimes in science. It's actually, I find it a wonderful resource. And they do that, there we go, because of coverage like this. So, this was American coverage of a story in which, if you actually look at this was the header on a magazine, you would have no idea what this was about, except for the fact that somewhere generically, if you happen to be touching plastic, you would be getting fat, right? You could just look at that one word, plastic's fat. And this is exactly the kind of reporting on chemical issues that I think but oversimplifies, obviously, to the point of ridiculousness. But actually what this is about a compound that you find in the structure of chemical liners and sometimes plastic called bisphenol A. Everyone know bisphenol A, BPA? And BPA is one of those chemical compounds that is a poster child, what I think of as poster child chemicals. And we do this a lot. We pick chemical compounds and they become the sort of activist poster child compounds. And for the last couple of years, BPA has been that. And BPA in rodents is a very interesting endocrine disruptor. It's much less clear that it has an effect in people. And this study is really about, or this headline is really about a single study which involves some mice which were fed a high level of BPA in their diet, and those mice got fatter than the non-BPA mice. Now, does that mean that plastic is going to make me fat? No, it doesn't. It means that there's a study that needs to be done again, and it needs to be done again across a range of other species. But when you do this kind of reporting on chemicals, you focus this kind of, generalized fear of something that often doesn't logically even make sense. And one of the reasons that this bothers me, as I'm going to call myself for the minute an ethical journalist, is because I see people putting endless amounts of time into these slightly iffy chemical risks, and we don't spend enough time on the legitimate chemical risks, and they exist. I'm not going to stand up here and tell you that every chemical compound is good for us, because they aren't. Sometimes the natural occurring ones are more dangerous than the industrial ones. But if I was going to give you an example of a much better story than this, let's take lead poisoning in Nigeria, guys. That does not get enough coverage. There's hundreds of children who have died in Nigeria from lead poisoning related to gold mining there. I would much rather, I understand why we see this instead, but I would much rather see these stories, and I see a pattern in chemical coverage of picking these poster child chemicals that are middle class, affluent issues, right? We pick the ones where people can say, I'm going to buy a different baby bottle. We don't pick the ones where we can say, well, let's go save those children in Nigeria who are being poisoned by lead. And I wish that we could shift our coverage of chemistry somewhat, and toxic chemistry, in that way. Oopsie. I keep thinking I'm skipping things. Here I put, I'm going to have to come down again because I can't see this. I think these are stories that have appeared in the American media that were debunked by the website Snopes.com. If you ever go to Snopes, their mission in life is debunking urban myths. So among the stories that we've seen in American media are plastic chopsticks cause cancer, have no idea why. Candy manufacturers put titanium into peppermint sticks because it tastes great, I guess. Canola oil can be used as a military weapon, and I'm not sure if that just means you boil it and pour it on the enemy. Baby shoes use narcotics to numb the skin. All of these are untrue and commonly used erasers. We think it was the magic eraser blend. Contains formaldehyde. And these stories start as rumor, they get picked up by the media, and pretty soon people are, I guess, dumping their canola oil and burning their erasers, but none of them are true. So the other part of that story is that when we see these kinds of rumors, instead of ourselves accepting that weird chemophobic view of the world, we should say, wait a minute. Right, is that necessarily true? Well, how would they use canola oil as a military weapon? This is a really good example of debunking one of these urban myths. This is actually from Scientific American, so you would expect it. That's a tribute to Boris, sitting down in the front row. But this was a myth that this artificial sweetener Splenda was really chemically like DDT. And this went everywhere. Don't sweeten your coffee with Splenda or its associates because you're going to be swallowing pesticides. It was completely untrue. If you took a minute to actually look at the chemistry, you can look here. This guy had put up the chemical formulas. You see the chemical formula for DDT up there. You see sucralose, which is Splenda, and you see sucrose, which is common sugar. And it makes a perfect example of the fact that if you just take a little time to say, could that absolutely be right, and do minimal chemistry homework, and it's just homework. All of this stuff is out there on the internet. You can avoid making an actual idiot of yourself with these kinds of stories, but you can also stop people from obsessing over the dangers of Splenda in their coffee. If I was going to worry, I'm a chemistry writer, if I was going to worry about Splenda in my coffee, I would not worry about DDT, I would worry about methanol. That particular artificial sweetener metabolizes in part to methanol, and methanol, as you will hear from me tomorrow, is a really poisonous substance. So go ahead and have Splenda, but I wouldn't have, a cup a minute or anything because of the methanol effect. Go, baby. Oopsie. Okay, so this is the other thing that makes me completely insane about the way we cover chemicals is you see television stations, you see this in newspapers, I hunted it down once in the New York Times, carrying on the idea of chemical-free anything. Nothing's chemical-free, right? It just doesn't exist. And actually, if you have an idea of something that is chemical-free, if you could come up to me today with your chemical-free compound, you and I could be very rich because the Royal Society of Chemistry has offered £1 million flat for the first chemical-free invention. So, and I believe they told me that someone had proposed a thought experiment as an entry, but they rejected that. But you see this a lot. Chemical-free was a marketing phrase. It's part of, I think, this general social chemophobia. If there's no chemicals in it, it's good. If there's chemicals in it, it's bad. It really refers to industrial chemicals. So when I see these, I often mock these on my Wired blog. But I also want to bring it up because we fall into this trap way too easily of just repeating a marketing phrase. Nothing is chemical-free, and often the industrial chemicals are not necessarily as bad as the naturally occurring chemicals. Nevertheless, this idea percolates throughout society. This is a park sign from the USA in Colorado, Durango, Colorado. And so you see this message spread out anyway. And it's important, not going back just to the chemophobia part, but to the idea that we as science writers believe that we should help enable a science-literate world. And a science-literate world where people can walk up and see a sign like that and not think it's funny is not exactly the direction we want to go. Go, baby. There. So why does this matter? It matters because in the way we tell these stories, aside from science literacy, there's a public health implication. And part of our job, I think, is to keep people informed enough that they're not necessarily poisoning themselves. And this is from a story out of Mexico that just happened last week. There was a pool party sponsored by the drink company Jägermeister. And they decided they wanted to create this wonderful fog floating off the surface of the pool. And to create the fog, what they did is they dumped 4 canisters of liquid nitrogen into the water. So if you know any basic chemistry at all, you know that what happens when you take liquid nitrogen and you put it in this kind of situation is that at this temperature and in contact with moist air, it boils off, essentially boils. It turns from its liquid, which is its super cooled state, goes through a phase change, boils off, and creates what you actually see here is a vapor of nitrogen, and it's heavier than oxygen. So within that vapor, there's no oxygen, right? So that everyone who is standing around the pool, who was in the pool, was breathing nitrogen and not oxygen. And so you saw many people go to the hospital, and the last time I checked, at least one of them was still in a coma because of the long time lacking oxygen to the brain. If you knew, and most of us don't, any kind of basic chemistry, you would know this was not a brilliant experiment, and you would not, and just as a general rule, if you were thinking you wanted to create a nitrogen fog, this is me saying, don't do it. But the other thing was that when you looked at the stories that followed this, almost all of them originally didn't tell the reader what I'm telling you. Almost all of them made an assumption that somehow the evil chlorine in the pool had reacted with the oxygen and created a toxic fog. And so every story just about came out and said, don't mix nitrogen with chlorine, which made absolutely no difference. Liquid nitrogen's a fairly inert gas. It wouldn't have reacted much with the chlorine anyway. The problem was that it just suffocated people, so that you could read those stories and say, wow, but if that is a cool fog, and if I just did it in the pond in my backyard, everything would be fine. So the point is that it is on us to actually do enough homework to find out what happened here and how it worked. And again, you don't have to be a chemist to do this. There were actually blogs by chemists that walked through this exact situation. Go. Okay. One more point. This is one of the issues that I keep writing about, which is arsenic in the food supply. I wanted to, and it's one of my personal favorite issues. I want to mention it really briefly on 2 points. One is arsenic's naturally occurring. So for the most part, what you're talking about is not an evil industrial chemical, but an evil naturally occurring chemical. Most people, if you talk to people who are working with now arsenic in the environment, they call it the #1 chemical contaminant problem in the environment in the world. You see, and it is in the rice, and it gets into rice. It's in the soil, it's in the water, it gets into food, largely rice. Rice is a vacuum for minerals, and so rice really pulls up large amounts of inorganic arsenic compared to anything else. China is the first country to limit the amount of arsenic in rice because of this problem. WHO is looking at it as well, and the FDA in the United States is very, very, very slowly looking at it, but I mention it because it's important to actually know what the risks are and to be aware that we don't make all of them ourselves. This is a naturally poisonous planet. Arsenic is a really problematic compound, not only in food, but primarily in water. It's caused really serious problems in the water supply in Taiwan. It has caused enough problems in the water supply in Bangladesh that WHO called that the #1 poisoning is the greatest poisoning of a human population in history due to arsenic contamination of water supplies in Bangladesh. And there are places in the United States where it is just as high, and low-level arsenic at the part per billion level has been linked to everything from cancer to diabetes to cognitive delay. So it's a very powerful compound, and my point is we spent less time worrying about iffy little middle-class poisons and more time focusing on the ones that we know do harm, we would do ethically a far better job of informing our readers. Still, this is my primary message. Not everything's evil, right? We live in a chemical world. We're made of chemicals. Most of these things don't harm us. Many chemicals do wonderful things for them, and we put them to good work. We need to put that kind of balance into the way we report, and I will leave you with this very positive thought about why this is a good thing. Thank you.
are not working. Even there's something happened. They are all, oh, okay, wonderful, wonderful.
Excellent, now you can hear me. I try to manage with my papers and with my microphones and with this stick. I am Ulla Järvi. I have always told that my second name means a lake in Finnish. But maybe we have a land of thousands lakes here in Finland. I'm a medical journalist. I have worked journalist always. I started when I was 19 and now I'm 50, so I've worked always. Last 13 years in Finnish medical journal. I have made my doctoral dissertation 2 years ago. I was studying health journalism and health education in Finland. It's in Finnish. I have a small story to tell to you. It tells about a small doctor and big scientific society. It also tells about Finnish children and teenagers, but they are so tiny that you can't see them behind the doctor. Well, once upon a time there was, like the fairy tales started, but this is not a fairy tale, and this is not only a fairy tale about or a story about the big one, the giant and the tiny one. This could be too easy. This is a story about difficulties and unfaith that researchers in small country may face. As you may remember, in 2009 we had a big epidemic to come, and heavy vaccination campaigns against swine flu started soon after the World Health Organization has warned about the pandemic influenza in summer 2009. And also the vaccination started in Finland during the autumn, and we have vaccination campaigns like mostly countries in the world. On the right side you can see the leaflet from UK. And there's a swine flu vaccination, what you need to know to protect yourself and others. And that was the main theme that was quite often seen in these campaigns, that you protect yourself, but with the vaccination you protect also others and your family members and other people. As you may remember, the swine flu epidemic seems to react very serious and threat the whole society. For example, the Finnish newspapers, we saw the figures like 6,000 citizens may die, or the Guardian claimed that even 65,000 may die of influenza in Great Britain. As we know, with journalists we love numbers, and the bigger numbers the better one, and fear makes headlines even bigger. Well, on the whole summer we waited and waited and waited to influenza. Nothing seems to happen. Every new infected person was a new one in the papers, but then it started. In Finland there was a small chaos after the first swine flu death, which happened in 2009 into autumn. The small girl died very rapidly. And there was a chaos in the queues. The people in this picture, they are queuing to get the vaccination right now, to me and to my children, because I am the one who needs it. And of course the Finnish media did it best, and I suppose that you all faced the popularity of the swine flu vaccination there. What happened after all this chaos and pandemic fear? In Finland there were about 50 deaths because of influenza, but mostly among the people who were already ill. For example, in Great Britain, there were 70 children who died during this influenza first wave, and globally died about 18,500 people. But we could say really that the vaccination saved lives. In Finland, we had a very heavy campaign in media and in public. So we were given the vaccination to 2.76 million Finnish citizens, and about 80% were children, because we believed the warnings that the swine flu influenza it's much more bad, or much more bad to children and teenagers and young adults, like opposite of the normal influenza, which kills older people. We used the pandemic vaccination, and like mostly countries in Scandinavia, in Northern Europe. But the differences with the vaccination rates were huge. In southern part of Europe, for example, they vaccinated only about 1% of children. Well, that was the influenza, okay? It went away. But what happened then? In the summer 2010, we saw the first stories mostly in Finnish evening papers, where they were telling that there has been children and teenagers who have got odd symptoms They have started to fall in sleep suddenly in daytime, and some of them just collapse when they laugh or cry. What is this disease? We know that we have the name, it was a narcolepsy. We have in our Scandinavian genes, we have this narcolepsy disease, but these symptoms in this summer, they were quite unusual. They were very heavy, very strong from the beginning. And quite soon parents and some anti-vaccination activists started to blame pandemic vaccination, which their children has got some weeks earlier. Who would believe them? What's this cause of vaccinations? Finnish officials from our health organization and ministry were doubtful at first, of course, because they didn't know what was it. But the officials and doctors very soon started to collect the data. And then we got answers. Maybe. In Finland, we have now the figures. That year, 54 children under age 17 were diagnosed narcolepsy. And that was a 17-fold increase of the usual figures. So we know that there must be something that has happened in that winter, because the symptoms were so different. And for the 7 of these children, they have this cataplexy symptom when you just lose the control of your legs, when you have a strong emotion. And also the psychiatric symptoms were very common. And now we know that children, they still have the disease. It didn't went away. It changed their brains and their nerve system for good. Some are feeling better and some are feeling worse. Some are even in psychiatric hospital because their symptoms are so heavy. At the same time, on that summer, the media blamed very heavily the officials and doctors and the vaccination officials that you don't do anything, that you don't accept us, that you don't believe us. But at the same time, the researchers collected data. The same officials in the Health Organization of Finland, they collected data to get to know what has happened, like the scientists do. And they try to find any clue. But the mother here in this picture, she is with her child on the behind, and she said the price was too high. Now we become to the big science and small country. In autumn 2011, the Finnish scientists were ready to publish their first article. And they sent them to big science, medical scientific journals. And they got answers, and they were like, you had told. Many said no. Lancet said no. New England Journal of Medicine said no. What kind of answers they had to Finnish scientists who have noticed something that haven't noticed never ever before. They got answers that after long discussion we have to deny your article because of the lack of biological connection to be shown. The Finnish scientists couldn't show the biological connection. As you may know, if we if we can explain a biological connection to some disease very specifically, we might be very rich, because we don't, mostly of diseases, we don't know the biological connection. Or they got answers that there might be some scientific bias because of huge media attention in Finland in summer 2010. Aha, media. That's a very good target to blame. So they were arguing that the Finnish overdiagnosed this disease, because we noticed that, maybe this is narcolepsy, and they started to look after narcolepsy. So it was because of media. And the scientists also asked from the editor-in-chief, from some journals, and editor-in-chiefs said that, well, we have so many interesting articles that interest our readers to be published. That's not yours article. Then at last in 2012, PLOS ONE published, and if you are interested to read the article, it's in open access journal. Markku Partinen and others increased incidence and clinical picture of childhood narcolepsy following the 2009 pandemic vaccination campaign in Finland. And during this last year, there has been published more, but smaller studies. From UK, from Sweden and Ireland, and so on. So, the science journals were cautious, the officials were doubtful. For example, European Medical Agency still try to find the biological connection, of course, like the scientists in Finland and quite many other countries too. They say that there are some link. And the Finnish scientists said that it's the adjuvant that is using in the vaccination, ASO3 adjuvant. The popular media was interested. This is quite new news from Channel 4 from UK, that there's linked. They have started to believe. But there I come to my point, to my presentation. This difficult grey area we have with journalists, usually, as we have, and especially when we talk about vaccination. When you give very strong medicine to quite healthy child or person, what kind of symptoms, what kind of side effects we can allow? But how to explain this scientific? Like you had told, it's always very tricky one when you talk about risk factors, odds ratio, incidence rates, how it can do. On the left side, there is from this summer, 2 weeks ago, there were news from Australia where a young boy suffered tetanus infection. He had got a small wound, and then her parents didn't want to give him tetanus vaccination, and he almost died. Have we lost from our collective memory the knowledge of how difficult these common diseases can be? The role of media. What about ethics? What about the scientific bias and huge headlines? Was it the Finnish narcolepsy spike only cause of media? I don't think it was, but it's a good reason to blame if you have something new, because the new is not, or seems to not to be so important in scientific media. Is the media promoter of vaccinations by marketing dreadful diseases like influenza like we did? Happened it so that it was only a moralistic hangover when you first give a space to big campaign and to heavy pressure and propaganda that you have to vaccinate, and then you notice something happens, oh yes, of course, we knew something is going to happen. Or is the media like quite often the doctors and officials claim that the media is the enemy of public health by spreading suspicious stories about vaccination side effects? These are really difficult questions and I don't have any answers. Well, to the end. What is this media role in this kind of grey area news? I think that media is often too kind to scientific opinion leaders. We need the first publication in an article in the Lancet or in Name or in British Medical Journal, and then we have courage to make a news. And too often the scientists and scientific societies stay in shadows. It's easier to be quiet. The Finnish didn't get so much support from other scientists from the world when they noticed something new. And the one thing that is most important, when something happens, media can't be silent for fear of blaming afterwards the cause of bias. No, we can't be silent because we have a work to do. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the time constraints and the schedule. We won't be having questions. I am very sorry for this, but all the plenary speakers are here, so please meet them and discuss with them. I have 3 household announcements. One of them is that we will be making a statement from Helsinki conference about science journalism. It will be distributed to our website. Read it and comment it. It will be open to social media comments 2 days now during the conference. And it has some thoughts about the future of science journalism. Then the second household announcement is that there will be today Nature press conference at 1 p.m. in the consistorium where the press briefings are. And there is new research to be published, and because there has been a time change, so please note that it will be at 1 p.m. And then the third one is that you have all had in your registration had a choice of certain social program, and as you know, they are fully booked. So if you are not planning to attend to a social program, if you know already that you cannot make it, but you have registered, please tell it to the registration or any of the volunteers or whoever. So there are people in line waiting to be attending to these social programs. They have been highly popular. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.